So if you've ever stood in front of a world-famous masterpiece, just shuffling through a crowded museum,
Oh, yeah. The absolute chaos of those
right,
rooms.
you're bumping elbows, you finally make it to the front of the line, and you just secretly feel absolutely nothing.
It happens to the best of us.
It really does. And, well, you aren't alone. You certainly aren't uncultured. The problem actually isn't your artistic taste.
No, not at all.
The problem is that we have all been trained to look at art in the completely wrong direction. We look across its surface, taking in the scene from left to right, top to bottom, like we're just reading a billboard,
Hmm.
but we rarely stop to actually look into it.
And that is just a profound distinction. I mean, we are so conditioned by the digital age to consume images instantly, right?
Yeah.
Just scrolling, swiping, scanning the flat surface of a screen. We completely forget that a centuries-old painting is actually a physical, three-dimensional object constructed over time.
Exactly. And that shift in perspective, going from looking across a surface to looking vertically down into it, well, that's the core of what we are unpacking today.
Yeah, it's a fascinating shift.
It really is. So we are exploring this remarkable essay by Levne Moten titled Rafael's Compressed Colors.
Mhm.
And the mission of this deep dive is to completely alter how you, the listener, experience a museum.
It's ambitious, but I really think this essay pulls it off.
We do too.
Yeah.
We are going to unpack two concepts that fundamentally change the physics of painting, really. The compression of time and the compression of color.
Yeah.
And we're going to challenge the idea that the sheer fame of a masterpiece might actually be acting as a blinder to true beauty.
Because the author, he dismantles the mechanics of Renaissance painting in a way that just forces you to reconsider everything.
Right, from the studio process to the public hype centuries later.
Exactly. It's a thesis that requires us to really get into the mind of the painter.
Which actually brings up a quick formatting note for you, the listener, before we dive into the deep end here. The source text we are working from is written so intimately and with such a specific personal voice that the most authentic way to explore it is to present it in the first person.
It really is a personal journey for him.
Yeah, so throughout this deep dive, I am going to channel the author's voice directly. I'll be using his exact words to bring his presentation to life. So when I quote the text, just imagine it as a guided tour straight from the author's mind.
And to grasp where his mind is going with the physical compression of color, we first have to understand his philosophical baseline for how a painting handles time.
Right, the foundation of the whole argument starts there. I mean, before you mix a single pigment, you have to grapple with the clock.
Mm-hmm.
Let's set the stage with the author's own framing. He writes, "A photo captures one moment, one thin slice of now. A painted portrait, especially a great one, carries many moments compressed into one face."
I love that phrase. And consider the fundamental physics of those two mediums. A photograph is reliant on the mechanical click of a shutter.
Right, it's instant.
Exactly. It's a fraction of a second. It is the ultimate distillation of a single, isolated instant.
Just a flash.
Yeah. If you happen to be angry or bored or distracted for that 1/100th of a second, well, you are permanently angry, bored, or distracted in that image.
Wow, yeah.
The camera isolates time. But a painter working in oil, they accumulate it.
Because the painter is witnessing the subject over this extended duration. They aren't capturing a flash. They're sitting in a room with another human being for hours, days, sometimes even weeks.
Exactly. And during those weeks, the sitter's internal weather inevitably changes.
The internal weather. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. On Tuesday, they might arrive exhausted and heavy. By Thursday, they're amused by a conversation. The following week, they are deeply lost in an anxious thought.
Right, they're a whole different person.
Exactly. And the painter doesn't just pick one of those days to paint. The artist's brush is methodically absorbing all of those microscopic shifts and tension.
Like the tightening of a jawline.
Yes, or the softening of the eyes. And they are synthesizing those varied emotional states into one single static surface.
It reminds me of those time-lapse videos of a bustling city intersection at night.
Oh, sure.
Where an entire 12-hour cycle is just collapsed into a single still frame.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just see one car.
Yeah.
You see the glowing, blurred trails of 10,000 headlights stacked on top of each other.
That is a perfect way to look at it.
So the painted portrait acts as a time-lapse of a human being's psychology, just collapsed into a single frame.
And the resulting image is literally heavy with duration. It contains this expanse of time that a photograph physically cannot hold.
Mm-hmm.
So the viewer standing in the gallery then has to intuitively unpack that compressed timeline using their own sustained attention.
Okay, so I can wrap my head around a painting compressing time in that metaphorical, psychological sense.
Hmm.
The hours of sitting, the shifting moods. But the essay makes a much more literal claim. How does the physical paint, like the actual wet oil and pigment on the tip of the brush, how does that compress the colors?
Well, for that, we have to move from the abstract philosophy of time directly into the chemistry and optical physics of oil painting.
The actual science of it.
Right. The medium itself is the mechanism for this compression.
Okay, let's visualize this layering process. The author actually takes us into the mind of the great Renaissance master Rafael, imagining him standing before his monumental canvas, the Sistine Madonna.
A classic.
Yeah, he writes, "I do not see him simply applying color to a surface. I see him painting and overpainting the elements of the painting a mind-boggling number of times."
So when we talk about oil paint, we really have to distinguish it from something opaque, like the tempera paint used earlier in the Renaissance, or, the acrylics we use in grade school.
Right, those just sit on top and block what's underneath.
Exactly. But linseed oil, which binds the pigment in oil painting, has a unique property, and that is translucency. Ah.
Okay. When Raphael is painting a portrait, he isn't just squeezing a flat flesh tone out of a tube and frosting the canvas like a cake.
He's laying down thin, semi-transparent layers over top of one another.
Yes, exactly.
The author describes this microscopic process so vividly. He says, a slight warming here, a softening there, a little more depth in the fold, a little less sharpness in the edge.
And those thin layers, we call those glazes, and the process fundamentally alters how light interacts with the canvas.
Oh, so.
Well, in a finished Raphael painting, a photon of light from the museum gallery actually travels through the top layer of translucent paint, passes through several intermediate layers, hits the opaque underpainting, and then bounces all the way back out through those layers to hit your retina.
Wow, so it's literally a form of optical mixing.
Exactly.
He's not mixing green on his palette. He's painting a translucent yellow glaze over a dried blue underpainting, and the mixing happens inside the viewer's eye.
Right. The technique is remarkably similar to stacking sheets of colored stained glass on top of one another over a light box.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Each microscopic decision, each imperceptible glaze of warmth or coolness, alters the final output. The surface you see is optically altered by all the colors physically trapped beneath it.
Let me try a different analogy for you. Think of it like a masterfully produced song.
Okay, I like that.
When you listen to a final track, you are hearing a single compressed audio file. But that file contains 50 different stems, right? The rhythm guitar, the subtle backing vocals, the slight reverb on the snare.
Oh, yeah.
You might not consciously hear every individual track, but if the producer muted the bass line, you would immediately feel that the song had lost its depth.
Absolutely.
The final skin of the oil painting contains the DNA of all those invisible draft versions.
That's spot on. The color you perceive is the sum total of the artist's accumulated judgment, literally stacked and trapped in the pigment.
But, this introduces a massive mechanical and psychological problem.
What do you mean?
Well, if an artist is constantly adding glazes, constantly tweaking, warming, softening, how do they avoid ruining it?
I mean, if you keep layering stained glass, eventually no light gets through and it just looks black. How does a painter avoid turning the canvas into a muddy, overworked mess?
And that tension you were describing is the precipice every master painter dances on.
It sounds terrifying.
It is. It is the concept of the stopping point, which Nemotin argues is perhaps the most crucial element of a masterpiece.
Let me quote his perspective on this, because he articulates that tension beautifully. He says, "And he would not stop until he saw that one more stroke of the brush would not add beauty, but would override the beauty already accumulated over time." So the final painting is not only the result of adding, it is also the result of knowing when not to add anymore.
Which is so profound. The psychology of restraint separates competence from true genius.
I believe it.
It is incredibly tempting for an artist to keep fixing, to keep nudging the contrast, to chase this impossible perfection.
Yeah, just one more touch-up.
Exactly. Recognizing the exact moment of diminishing returns, that exact millisecond, where one more glaze of shadow will kill the internal light of the painting that requires an almost supernatural intuition.
Wow.
The brushstrokes that Raphael consciously chose to withhold, the actions he decided not to take, are architecturally just as important as the layers he actually put down.
The invisible boundaries of restraint. That's incredible. And because of these hidden layers, both the decisions physically buried in oil and the decisions purposely withheld at the very end, the author argues we need a completely new framework for how we consume art.
We really do.
We have to go on a vertical journey.
Yeah, our default mode of scanning horizontally completely fails to honor the physical reality we just discussed.
The author describes this new way of seeing with just this infectious passion. I'll tell him here again. He says, I try to zoom inside the paint and visualize the surface of the painting as a three-dimensional structure. My eyes pierce into it from the surface downward, and I imagine the paint changing along this vertical line, almost atom by atom, as if I am traveling inside the painting itself. What a marvelous trip this would be, not across the image, but into it.
The practical application of this in a museum is transformative.
How so? Exactly. For the average person.
Well, even without the specialized X-ray equipment of an art conservator revealing the hidden underdrawings, you can sensitize yourself to this depth. When you stand before a truly great Renaissance oil painting, the surface practically vibrates.
It has a weight to it. You can almost feel the density of the choices.
Exactly. The surface only appears quiet and resolved because all of the turbulent internal movement, the struggle of the initial sketch, the violent corrections, the changing of minds regarding the position of a hand or the drape of a fabric, all of that has been forcefully compressed beneath the final glaze.
You are looking down a well of layered time.
A well of layered time, yes.
Okay, so now we have to take this incredibly intimate microscopic framework of looking vertically at a single brush stroke. And we need to blow it up to the macroscopic level.
Let's do it.
How does this concept of compressed beauty hold up against the massive, deafening noise of public fame?
Yeah, so Nemotin actually transitions from philosophical observation to a structural experiment to test this. He looks at Raphael's entire body of work in the real world.
He creates a bracket. The author researched and ranked 21 of Raphael's major oil works. Now, he notes that this isn't some rigorous scientific algorithm.
Right, it's more subjective.
Yeah, it's a ranking based on a blend of public recognition, pop culture presence, and general professional appreciation. It's essentially an index of how loudly the world remembers these paintings.
And the middle of the pack gives you a good sense of the baseline.
Okay.
You have monumental achievements like the Transfiguration near the top, the incredibly psychological portrait of Baldassare Castiglione at number 3, and then moving down through historically vital but slightly less ubiquitous works like the Alba Madonna or the portrait of Pope Julius II.
But the objective wasn't to play art critic and argue over whether number 4 is better than number 5.
No, not at all.
The goal was to bracket the extreme ends of Raphael's fame. He wanted to take the absolute number 1 most famous painting, place it side by side with the absolute number 21 least famous painting, and observe what the disparity in public noise does to our vertical perception of the art.
And the extremes of that bracket expose our own biases as viewers.
I really do. So let's lay out the contenders. Sitting at number 1 is the Sistine Madonna, painted around 1512 or 1513, currently housed in Dresden.
Yeah, and this painting represents the ultimate public Raphael. It carries an aura of infinite fame. The composition is a perfectly balanced theatrical revelation.
It's just massive.
And inevitably, it features those two iconic board-looking cherubs resting their elbows on the bottom edge of the canvas.
Oh, of course.
Those angels have detached from the painting entirely to become their own pop culture phenomenon. I mean, they've been reproduced on everything from umbrellas to coffee mugs for decades.
It is a painting that carries the crushing weight of global expectation. Like, you already know it's a masterpiece before you even buy the museum ticket.
You do.
But then, anchoring the absolute bottom of the list at number 21, we have the Comitas and Justitia fragments, painted around 1519 to 1520 and hidden away in the Vatican.
The contrast couldn't be sharper. These are not grand, self-contained canvases. They are oil-on-wall fragments located in the Hall of Constantine.
They aren't even framed paintings.
No. They don't offer a complete, harmonious scene. They are incredibly rare, functionally hidden from the standard tourist route, and they possess near-zero public recognition outside of deep art history circles.
Honestly, this is where I have to push back on the author's underlying premise, or at least play devil's advocate for the average museum goer here.
Go for it.
When I look at a broken, dusty fragment on a wall, I don't feel the same awe as I do standing in front of the sweeping majesty of the Sistine Madonna. Isn't this 21-point bracket just proving a massive crowd effect? Like, doesn't a famous painting dominate our perception simply because it deserves to? Is the author just being a contrarian art snob here, trying to find profound beauty in a scrap of wall just to prove a point?
In that reaction, that is the exact trap the author is illuminating.
Okay, tell me why.
Well, fame is a double-edged sword in art appreciation. On one hand, fame acts as a spotlight. It directs our limited attention to the masterpiece in the first place, ensuring its survival. But on the other hand, fame acts as a blinder. The aura of assumed greatness surrounding the Sistine Madonna is so loud, the public consensus so overwhelming that it deafens us.
Oh, wow.
We stop actively looking at the painting and start looking at its reputation. We assume a forgotten fragment is vastly inferior simply because history didn't put it on a coffee mug.
So, to answer my own skepticism requires actually doing the experiment, putting the number 1 and the number 21 side by side, stripping away the noise of the crowd, and checking if the compressed color holds up equally in both. We have to look vertically into both of them.
Yes. And the result of that side-by-side comparison is the revelation of the entire piece. When you let the ranking dictate your expectation, you naturally assume the wall fragment will feel secondary, like a mere warm-up act, and the famous canvas will completely dominate the room with its superior technique.
But the reality of the paint tells a completely different story.
It does. The Sistine Madonna is undeniably an extraordinary achievement. It commands its space. The forms have a harmonious, inevitable beauty. The softness of the execution doesn't cause the image to lose its structural power, and the perfect harmony doesn't render it emotionally empty.
The author actually notes that the child in the painting is undeniably beautiful, but avoids being merely sweet.
Right.
And the Madonna herself is incredibly gentle, but never devolves into mere decoration. It definitely earns its number 1 spot.
But the shock comes when you turn that exact same vertical scrutiny to the fragmented wall.
The number 21?
Yes. It was created for a different scale, it served a different architectural function, and it suffered a completely different, much crueler public destiny.
Right.
Yet beneath the damage and the obscurity, it possesses the exact same DNA of genius.
Wow.
It exhibits the same quiet authority of line, the same masterful control of form and color compression. It doesn't attempt to compete with the Madonna as a sweeping, complete universe, but it absolutely refuses to disappear in its presence.
The author's summary of this realization is, I think, the emotional crux of the essay. I'll read his conclusion here. He says, both carry Rafael. One loudly, because the world has learned to hear it. The other quietly, because we have to come closer.
Because we have to come closer. The necessity of coming closer changes the dynamic entirely.
It really does.
The compression of color and time in the Sistine Madonna is vast, it's open, and it's broadcasted to the entire world. In the Forgotten Vatican fragment, that exact same compression is intensely concentrated. But the underlying process, the physical reality of the art, is identical in both.
The meticulous layer over layer, the countless invisible corrections, and that disciplined, terrifying restraint of the stopping point.
Exactly. The fame ranking proves to be a useful sociological tool to understand how history organizes itself, but it has nothing to do with the generation of beauty.
Right.
A completely different palette, utilizing a different scale, surviving as a mere scrap, can harbor the exact same source code of brilliance. The identical hand, the identical eye, the identical judgment of light and shadow.
So right there.
When you strip away the ranking and look vertically into the paint, the obscure fragment suddenly hums with life. Conversely, the world-famous Madonna sheds its exhausting pop culture baggage and becomes a real, vulnerable, physical painting again.
Which means the lesson here extends far beyond Raphael or the Renaissance.
Yeah.
Next time you, our listener, walk through a gallery or even just pause in front of a piece of art hanging in a hallway, remember this mechanical reality.
Yes.
You are not scanning a flat, instantaneous image. You are standing in front of a physical battery of compressed time, compressed color, and compressed human decisions.
So resist the urge to merely consume the surface horizontally.
Look vertically. Let your eyes pierce down into the translucent glazes. Try to mentally excavate the hours of patience, the shifting moods of the subject, and the immense, quiet restraint hidden inside that finalized surface.
And, the implications of that restraint offer a final, lingering thought for us to carry out of the museum and into our daily routines.
Oh, absolutely.
The true power of a masterpiece relies just as heavily on the invisible layers and the final defining brushstrokes the artist consciously decided not to make. It forces a reflection on our own lives, our own careers, and the way we interact with others. How much of our own profound value, our own quiet beauty, is actually defined by the words we choose to hold back, the impulses we manage to restrain, and the depths we purposefully leave hidden just beneath the surface.